All right. Well, over the weekend, I was prepping for this panel. I came across a tip on the art of conversation, and it said, do not ask about the weather. But I'm going to break that rule and ask it anyway, because with me here, I have the world's best badass grandpa. So, how's the weather?
I noticed you made that reference to badass grandpa simply because I told you that I'm tired of being called wise or legendary on behalf of my age, and that my grandkids called me badass grandpa. So thank you. I'm not wise, I'm not legendary, I'm young at heart and a badass grandpa. You asked me how's the weather?
That's right.
I would say if you're in Singapore, you're really out of touch with the weather because it's always cold. I think all Singaporeans know you wear a suit, you wear a coat like I'm doing to a Singapore office because the weather in Singapore in an aircon room is always too cold. And therefore, basically, it's quite unsustainable because the differential is growing. It's nice to talk about the weather because you used to be in London, you talk about how's the weather, it'd be raining or not raining. So I had a chat yesterday by Zoom with my colleagues in Europe, and it was really one of, well, is it 45 degrees or is it only 43 degrees? And I just came back from Finland, jokingly and not half jokingly, I might be looking for a tropical beach resort in Finland. I was asking my colleagues in Italy last night where they're going for holiday in the summer, and they're going to Iceland. Not Greenland, because they don't particularly want to be part of the United States, but they're going to Iceland. And I think that says it all. Climate change, in my view, is no longer about mitigation. Mm-hmm. It's actually about adaptation. And I think on the more serious side, I think the world is at a tipping point. I truly believe, perhaps with the advantage of a broader perspective due to age and so on, I think the history is going to record that the second quarter of the 21st century is at a tipping point of unsustainability. All the indicators of sustainability in the broader sense of sustainability, not just climatic sustainability, but political sustainability, economic sustainability, social sustainability. I think all these indices are pointing to a perfect storm. And I think the next second quarter of this century, we are going to see a kind of catalytic upheaval that the world has not seen for a long time.
Wow. Doom and gloom for post-lunch. And now it's so extreme weather. It's not just about making small talk. As you talked about, it's becoming a very serious threat to lives, property, and making everything more expensive. How are you at Banyan Tree factoring that into the properties that you own, that you build, the architecture?
Leave aside. We in Banyan Tree, I guess we started on this journey, what people now call sustainability, way before the word was ever coined. And in fact, I find it ironic that people are using the word sustainability today to refer to largely environmental sustainability. Because I think the whole value of the word sustainability is in the definition of the word. How long can it last, right? That's what sustainability means. And I'll put it really in a way that has reference to us. My wife had actually put it out there at one of the conferences that she had said, I would prefer to be a 500-year-old company than a Fortune 500 company. Of course, I was there and I said, I want to be both. But, men are greedy. But what I meant about sustainability is it's about longevity. And if it's about longevity, it's not only the climate that determines it. Your summit is called the Sustainable Business Summit. Right. Well, what is sustainability in business? Is it only about carbon emissions? What about financial sustainability? We're seeing the financialization of the global economy in a really unsustainable way. The way private credit is going crazy, the way SPACs have gone, the way public equities markets are going. We're looking at political sustainability. I mentioned to you that we've seen 6 prime ministers in the UK in 10 years. Liberal democracy is becoming unsustainable. So we have to take that in a larger context, because we also operate in a geopolitical world. But on the simple part of environmental or climatic sustainability, at least I have decided, while all my colleagues still are doing everything we can in terms of climate mitigation, I've decided that my priority is no longer mitigation. My priority is adaptation. I'm looking at how all our hotels are basically going to face severe drought. They're going to face severe flooding. They're going to face inevitable changes to the climate that requires us to be responsible about adaptation. And now you see in Europe today the big arguments about whether to even have air conditioning or not in the ICU wards of hospitals because it might cause more carbon emission. In that sense, we are not going to be very progressive or very woke. And we take a position where we determine for ourselves what sustainability means. And everybody has to do that because there's no more gospel as to what sustainability is anymore.
You talked about sustainability on several fronts. Now let's talk about the world. You talked about this dystopian future about, is it end of days? It almost sounds like that. We've got tensions in the Middle East, disrupted fuel supplies, and that war has brought sustainability back to the fore and making it a very real world issue, not just a box ticking feel good exercise. Do you think that, with what we're going through right now, will there be long-term positive change, or is this more of a knee-jerk reaction?
I don't know about positive change or not, but I think it's not right to talk about dystopian or cataclysmic change. People, including journalists, and I belonged to your group before, love big headlines. So we talk about the tsunami of climate change, the tsunami of AI. I don't see it at all like that because tsunamis mean people, you've got a whole civilization or whatever totally collapsing. I think what's going to happen now, what AI is doing is simply accelerating. It's more like evolution at warp speed, meaning with what's happening today, and we've seen the world surviving through ice ages, through various actual climatic changes. The world has survived through quite a lot of civilizational changes, and that's another topic that I think is happening right now. I think the decline of Western civilization was inevitable over a long period of time. It's actually happening at warp speed now due to I don't know how many Americans are in the world, in the room here, and Bloomberg is an American company, but and I don't want to get banned from the US, but I think the United States is helping to accelerate the decline of Western civilization. So I think what's happening today around the world is not a tsunami. It's evolution at warp speed, meaning the human species is not going to die out, but many jobs are going to die out. Many civilizations are going to go into decline. Some are going to go up. And then the change that we are seeing is just happening far faster than people can possibly understand. And AI is helping to accelerate that change. The difficulty is that for many of us who are trying to look into the future, it's hard because so many factors are converging at the same time and interacting with each other. So it's not just climate change, it's geopolitical events are affecting climate change and geopolitical things are affecting the global economy. They're all interlinked, and I don't even think Claude can devise what the future is going to be 50 years from now.
You talked about politics. What other factors has led you to come to that conclusion? Is it, tariffs? Is it wars?
Which conclusion?
To reach this conclusion that, there's civilization, there's a change.
I think, I've said before, I think there's going to be, we're looking at civilizational reset, okay? I think Western civilization has done enormous good for the world. But if you take the longer perspective of global civilization, many of us have gone to see the Odyssey, then basically the world didn't just start, 300 years ago with Britain's ascension to being the sort of empire maker of the world and so on. Empires come and go, civilizations come and go. We have seen for the last 300 years, Western civilization, primarily starting with the advent of industrialization with the British, and then imperialism, colonialism. And it's not pejorative to me, I take it historically. I think all that has led to the primacy of America and Pax Americana for the last, altogether, 300 years. I think you're beginning to see clearly, rapidly, not the dominance of China, but you're beginning to see clearly there will be a civilizational reset where other non-Western civilizations will be co-equal, at least, to Western civilization. Now, that, I think, would have taken quite a long time to happen. As I said, I think it's being accelerated by events in the West, which is making the decline, the inevitable decline of Western civilization, and maybe its ascension again. But it's going to go through a decline and maybe ascend again. And it's just accelerating it. So my point, even to my own business, is that this is important because I have to recognize that there are other civilizations in the room now, other soft powers, and even in the hotel business, I look at the changes that are happening in the world.
Well, that's a really, really big thought. Well, if you talked about China, are there any other regions or countries that can...
Well, just to give you an example of my own industry, for example, okay, where it matters. I have long said since 20 years ago that even in terms of what I see as civilizational reset and changes, that you would see the rise of what I call rainbow tourism. Rainbow tourism because for the last, 100 years since then, and if you look at the history of tourism, tourism actually started when the British started going to visit their district officer children in the empire, right? And then it started from there. And it was always, for a long time, one direction from the center of the world, which was Europe, towards the far east or the far west, because Britain was the center of the world. And it was always in one color, white. And now you're beginning to see rainbow tourism. You're seeing yellow people, brown people, black people, pink people, all becoming rainbow tourism. And that is going to accelerate. I mean, if you put it in a more sort of geoeconomic terms, of course, you're seeing the rising middle class, younger middle class around the world beginning to grow and so on. But with that, you also see a lot of civilizational changes. The whole pattern of behavior, people's yearning for different types of experiences. So my whole point has been what's happening in the global world outside, which seems very, what Singaporeans would call very cheem, isn't really that cheem. It does affect your own business.
You talked about this rise of rainbow tourism, and you, KP, are the OG Mr. Sustainability before that even became a term. Your first Banyan Tree Hotel in Phuket, that was a huge mammoth exercise itself in sustainability. And then in 2004, the UN came out with this report called Who Cares Wins. Does that term still stand today? Who cares wins? Do people care about sustainability?
That's a very interesting thing. I think in pre-recent events in the US, everybody cared about sustainability. The bigger you were as a bank or as a PE company or whatever, the richer you were, the more money you spent on ESG, DEI, and all those nice things. And now you're finding that all these very rich companies are scrambling faster than they have to be to basically disavow any ESG goals, to disavow any DEI things because it's no longer cool to do so, no longer proper to do so. I think it is when everything falls apart, you then begin to see the people in the room who really do care. And when you ask the question, who cares wins? I think my belief is that if you care about your company's own fundamental values, you will win. It's not just about sustainability. Because, as I've said, in the next 25 years, there's going to be no direction for you to follow. In geopolitics, you can't follow China, you can't follow America. In terms of climate change, you can't look about whether you're doing adaptation or mitigation. In terms of AI, you're going to follow what's happening in China or America, or where do you go? It is going to be such a confusing world that if you care for your own values and what that matters for you, and you don't worry about whether you're going to be canceled or whether you're seen as woke, you don't care about any of these labels, but you just stick to what you have always believed in, you will ultimately win. And I have said openly that I think survival is 90% of success. And I do still believe it today, whether it be the species, animal species in the world, or it be a human being, or it be a company, survive first. And the only way to survive is to believe in your own instincts and your own direction, and not take guidance from what seems to be the flavor of the month.
Well, I'm going to say very boldly that enough people do care. I mean, look at the audience here. They care. You care.
Not very many, unfortunately.
Well, we'll try and make it happen.
All the consultants out there, I feel sorry for you, because all the businesses that were there going for ESG and so on, they're all now saying it's uncool to be following ESG and so on. So now, I mean, everybody who believes in it, some people are going to have to change careers. Some people who really do believe in it have to stick to your guns. And it's not going to be easy to stick to your guns, but essentially there's no other choice. If you just follow what's the latest trend, I don't think you're going to last very long.
Well, let's look at your share price. Banyan Tree did really well last year, went up like 80%. So clearly that was a winner. This year it's down about 12%. Do you think that's...
Our share price is, I can't say very much. We're doing quite a number of things now to probably fundamentally restructure the company. Our share price is a reflection partly of the very low liquidity that we have out there, because we're only about 10, 12% open float. The rest is all held by others. It's partly due to the fact that the company is very difficult to understand. We're not totally asset light. We're also asset light, asset heavy, and so on. So that's another whole issue altogether. We haven't been spending enough time, maybe partly because we have felt that, perhaps unfairly to other poor shareholders who've stuck with us, we've perhaps felt that share price increase is not the most important factor in a company, whereas perhaps we've been too negligent of that. On the other hand, I think the world is also looking at places where share price increase is the only indicator of success, which has led, of course, to extreme short-termism and so on. Maybe we're too extreme long-termism.
Well, you have a sovereign wealth fund as an investor in QIA.
Yeah, super patient, too patient. But we are doing a number of things to restructure, but I can't say what they are.
Okay. Does that in any way, shape or form involve, the other units under or the portfolio company?
Are you asking me as a Bloomberg journalist now about sustainability? You want me to talk about the stock exchange? Are we delisting? Are we relisting? Of course I can say all that and get myself into trouble. But no, I can't, I say. But we are, things will be happening soonish, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a clear sign to watch this space.
Watch this space.
All right. Well, KP, you talked a lot about, what's happening in the world, what's happening to civilization. What else do we need to brace for? Is there light at the end of the tunnel?
Is it like what?
Is there light at the end of the tunnel? Is it staying at one of your resorts?
No, I think, as I said, if you are a mouse, and you were, I don't know whether it's a mouse or not, but I kind of remembered that mice existed at the time of dinosaurs, right? So if you were a mouse at the time of the dinosaurs, you would be pretty optimistic because you'd still be around today. If you were a dinosaur at the time of the dinosaurs, you wouldn't be so happy today, right? So my point about light at the end of the tunnel is for whom? There's always going to be light at the end of the tunnel, to the extent I don't actually believe in the singularity thesis of AI, taking over the whole world, the human species is going to disappear, etc. And that kind of science fiction stuff, I don't really believe. I think the human species is going to survive. I think the world is going to result clearly in areas that are going to become desert-like. There's going to be areas which, and I was just joking with someone that I just came back from Finland to look at doing tropical beach resorts. And I don't think that's a joke. 20, 30 years from now, Northern Europe is going to be a much warmer place than it is now, right? And so on. People looking at the Arctic channels for transportation and so on. So the whole world is going to change physically. The human population is going to evolve. And very importantly, jobs are going to change. That's the immediate thing that young people are most worried about. But it's not as if all jobs are going to be gone, but a lot of jobs will be gone. A lot of jobs will be created. The problem from a social point of view is those people are going to be left behind. Net, there will still be probably full employment, but along the way, the so-called creative destruction that is so easily talked about as if it doesn't hurt people. Creative destruction is absolutely necessary in any economy, but it hurts those who are destroyed. And I think that's the responsibility of those of us who like to speak out about things and so on, that while we herald the advent of AI and the incredible things it can do on medicine and many other frontiers, we must not forget that at the end of the day, a lot of people are going to be left behind. And that becomes the work of social leaders, societal leaders, business leaders, and political leaders.
Okay. Our time is about up, but I want to squeeze in one more question, and let's bring it back to Banyan. So, your 3 children are clearly involved in the family business. You probably know what I'm getting at, succession planning.
No, I have no idea what you're getting at.
Succession planning.
Yes.
Yes. How is that looking for Banyan?
It's doing quite well. My youngest son, all 3 of the children were in the business. My youngest son has gone to do his MBA at Wharton. My eldest son is actually CEO of one of our listed companies, the companies that my father started. My daughter is now deputy CEO and will be CEO of the hotel management company, while I remain in charge of some of the other aspects, which is part of the whole restructuring. But I think I've talked to a number of family business forums where I've said that the biggest problem for anybody who started a company is to think that the people who come after him is not as good as he is, which is that kind of hubris, I think, is what destroys family succession in family companies. And I do not have that hubris. I do not think, I am the great thing. I think I was very lucky. I think I've hoped to have imbued with my children the values that they should have. And I've also said very importantly that, and it's important because there's so many family businesses in the world. I have said that families should exist for the sake of the business, not the business exists for the sake of the family. That's our fundamental philosophy and that of our children, that we want to remain a family business, even if listed, so that we can protect the things that all our 15,000 associates share with us in the culture, not that they play to the ego or the wealth of the family. So I think with the right philosophy, it's not as if there are no tensions, but with the right philosophy, I think we're going the right way.
All right. Well, there we have it, sustaining the business.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much for your time, KP.
Thank you.